Hello, my name is Patrick Castillo with Ntiva. Today we're tackling a critical issue, how our approach to security tools might be giving us a false sense of safety and costing more than it should. Attack surface sprawl, why your security stack is lying to you. So what is the core problem? We're caught in a paradox. People are spending more on security tools, yet the cost and frequency of breaches just continues to climb anyway. This is partly because our attack surface, which is all the points an attacker can target, is sprawling or growing due to the cloud, due to remote work, due to the Internet of Things, adding in so many assets that we weren't necessarily aware of. So what is our typical reaction to this? We just buy more tools. But this tool sprawl often creates more problems. People get a false sense of security, analysts are drowning in alerts, and abundant critical misconfigurations that are actually increasing our risks. For example, on the tools side, if you have a SIEM that's ingesting all of your logs, if you either don't know all of the different places you need to be pulling logs from due to like cloud adoption or just general sprawl, you're not going to get all the information you need. Also, if you're adding in all of these sources, it's sitting in all these extra alerts. And if you don't tune it properly, that's where that alert fatigue comes in. So you're going to be getting, hundreds of alerts when realistically you only need a dozen or two. So, tuning those SIEMs is more important than just getting a fancier SIEM. Spam, one of the most common ways people get hacked is someone clicks on something. Well, if you don't properly tune your spam filter, you're going to have more opportunities for people to fail. And then lastly, EDR, endpoint protection, MDR, stuff like that. If you don't have it properly deployed to all of your devices, it can't properly protect you. So, remote work, making sure you have a strong remote management policy, making sure that you have proper control over all those assets and as well as anything they can access. So, the hidden costs and consequences. So, this overload of tools has real financial consequences. We're paying for redundant licenses, unused shelfware, and high maintenance costs. Our teams are bogged down managing complexity instead of hunting real threats. And critically, as the Equifax breach showed, simply owning tools does not prevent disaster. If they're managed improperly, it doesn't matter. With the average breach now costing nearly $5 million, we can't afford this inefficiency anymore. You need to focus on optimizing what you have. So, this shift to a smarter defense instead of just a wide approach. So what is that smarter approach? First, you got to optimize what you got. Rationalize your tool set, get rid of those redundancies, ensure what you keep is actually working effectively. Second, shift that focus from just listing all the vulnerabilities to managing the exploitable exposure. I guess an example of this could be, you've got a old machine that's fairly vulnerable that's in a closet somewhere that's not actually internet accessible. That's going to be a little bit less exposed than your web server. You still need to address it, but it's not as exposed. So this is where continuous threat exposure management, or CTEM, comes into play. CTEM is a proactive cycle that helps identify, prioritize based on real business need and exploitability, and then validate that your fixes work. So it's about focusing on what truly matters. Leading the charge. So as leaders, you have a critical role. Challenge the status quo. Ask your teams tough questions like, are we consolidating tools? Are we prioritizing based on real business impact? Can we show a return on our security investments? Foster a culture where security is everyone's responsibility and demand metrics that speak to business value, like how quickly are we detecting and responding to threats and how we're reducing our overall financial risk. If you've got 50 tools and your average time to detect is 2 days, maybe you need to start prioritizing specific tools instead of quantity of tools. So in conclusion, the belief that simply buying more tools makes us safer is often a lie our security stacks tell us. True resilience comes from a strategic, risk-based approach. Understand your exposure, optimize your investments, focus on validated effectiveness, by championing the shift, you can build a more secure, efficient, and cost-effective defense for your organization. This goes across all security tools. You need to take a good hard look at what you're using for everything. Or if you're using a third party, you know, they ideally have already done this. So if you don't have the time or personnel to truly do this on your own, then you need to partner with a company that can. Because like I said, just buying a bunch of tools, throwing them in your environment, and hoping for the best is not a good sustainable plan for the future. That is all for today. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, please let us know. And once again, thank you for coming.